Inside a complex of deactivated tunnels, the damp, dark air foretold a high-risk operation in the early hours of the night. A veteran agent, alongside his police dog, advanced through the rusty labyrinth to an isolated section. The animal, trained and silent, sniffed the ground with growing attention. Without warning, it darted into a side corridor, vanishing into the darkness without a single sound. The distant echo of water droplets was the only witness to its disappearance. Heavy minutes followed as the agent waited, fixed and unmoving. Then, from the shadows, the dog returned, carrying something between its teeth. It was a worn cap belonging to a police officer who had been reported missing, but what that object meant, no one there could decipher. Do you love stories with animals? Then subscribe now and don't miss a single one. Thank you for following us. Now back to our story. The morning mist hung heavy over the abandoned industrial district of Detroit as Detective Marcus Thompson adjusted his tactical vest one final time. The routine inspection of the old tunnel system beneath the defunct Riverside manufacturing plant should have been straightforward, but something in the air felt different today. His German Shepherd, Ranger, a decorated canine unit with 8 years of distinguished service, stood alert beside him. Ears pricked forward, as if sensing the same unease. "You ready for this, boy?" Marcus whispered, running his weathered hand through Ranger's thick coat. The dog had been his partner for 5 years, and their bond ran deeper than most human relationships Marcus had experienced. They understood each other with the kind of silent communication that only came from countless hours of training and shared missions. The tunnel entrance loomed before them like a gaping mouth. Surrounded by rusted metal grating and decades of neglect, Detroit's industrial backbone had once thrived here, but economic shifts had left these underground passages forgotten by time. Recently, however, anonymous tips had been flooding the precinct about strange activities in the area. Captain Rodriguez had assigned Marcus to investigate, calling it a routine check, but Marcus knew better than to take anything at face value. "Thompson, you copy?" The radio crackled to life as Officer Jenny Patterson's voice cut through the morning silence. She was positioned at the secondary entrance, maintaining perimeter security while Marcus and Ranger went in first. "Copy, Patterson. We're heading in now. Keep the channel open." Marcus clicked on his high-powered flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness ahead. The tunnel stretched endlessly before them, a concrete artery that had once carried steam pipes and electrical conduits to power the bustling factory above. Now, it was a hollow shell, dripping with moisture and echoing with the ghostly memories of Detroit's industrial glory days. Ranger moved ahead, his training evident in every careful step. His nose worked constantly, analyzing the complex tapestry of scents that told stories of the tunnel's recent history. Marcus had learned to read his partner's body language like a book, and right now, Ranger was focused but not alarmed. That was good. That meant they were dealing with something routine, nothing that would threaten their safety. The first 100 yards revealed nothing unusual. Rust stains painted abstract patterns on the concrete walls, and the constant drip of water from somewhere above created a rhythmic soundtrack to their progress. Their footsteps echoed hollowly, creating a sound that seemed to stretch infinitely in both directions. "It's like a tomb down here," Marcus muttered, more to himself than to Ranger. The dog's ears twitched at the sound of his voice but remained focused on the path ahead. As they approached the first junction, where the main tunnel branched off into 3 separate passages, Ranger suddenly stopped. His entire body went rigid, and his head tilted slightly to the left. Marcus had seen this behavior before. Ranger had picked up a scent trail, something specific that had captured his attention. "What is it, boy? What do you smell?" The question hung in the damp air as Ranger began to move more deliberately. His tail was low but not tucked, indicating caution rather than fear. Whatever he had detected wasn't immediately dangerous, but it was definitely interesting enough to warrant investigation. Marcus felt his heart rate increase slightly. After 15 years on the Detroit police force, he had developed instincts that rarely steered him wrong. Right now, those instincts were telling him that this routine inspection was about to become something more complicated. The tunnel system had been built in the 1940s when Detroit was the engine of American industry. These passages had carried the lifeblood of manufacturing, steam, electricity, and compressed air lines that kept the factories running around the clock. During World War II, some of these tunnels had been used for classified military production, though most of those records had been sealed or lost over the decades. Marcus knew the history because he had grown up in Detroit, watching the city transform from industrial powerhouse to struggling metropolis to its current state of cautious renewal. His father had worked in these very factories before the big closures of the 1980s. In some ways, walking through these tunnels felt like walking through his own family history. "Patterson, how's the perimeter looking?" he called into his radio. "All quiet on this end, Marcus. Few curious pigeons, but that's about it. How are things down there?" Rangers picked up something. "We're following his lead on the left passage." As they moved deeper into the left tunnel, the walls began to change. The standard concrete construction gave way to older brickwork, suggesting they were entering a section of the tunnel system that predated the main industrial build-out. This area would have been part of Detroit's original infrastructure, possibly dating back to the early 1900s. Ranger's pace quickened, his nose working overtime. Marcus could see the dog's shoulders tensing with excitement and focus. Whatever scent trail they were following was getting stronger. The flashlight beam revealed more rust stains, some old pipe brackets that had lost their pipes decades ago, and the occasional piece of debris that had found its way down here over the years. Nothing that seemed particularly noteworthy, but Marcus had learned to trust Ranger's senses over his own eyes in situations like this. "Easy, boy, take your time." They had been walking for almost 20 minutes when Ranger suddenly froze again. This time, his entire body language changed. His ears went forward. His tail came up slightly, and he took 3 quick steps forward before looking back at Marcus with an expression that clearly said, "You need to see this." Marcus quickened his pace, following his partner around a slight bend in the tunnel. What he saw in the flashlight beam made his blood run cold, not with fear, but with the sudden realization that their routine inspection had just become something entirely different. There, partially hidden behind a fallen piece of concrete, was a dark blue baseball cap with the distinctive badge of the Detroit Police Department clearly visible on the front. Marcus knew that cap. He had seen it dozens of times over the past 3 years, worn by Detective James "Jimmy" Rodriguez, Captain Rodriguez's nephew and one of the newer additions to their precinct. Jimmy had been missing for 7 days now, and despite extensive searches throughout the city, no trace of him had been found until now. "Patterson," Marcus said into his radio, his voice carefully controlled despite the adrenaline surge coursing through his system. "I need you to contact Captain Rodriguez immediately. Tell him we've found something related to Detective Rodriguez's case." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever before Patterson's voice crackled back through the radio. "Copy that, Marcus. Calling it in now. Do you need backup down there?" Marcus looked at Ranger, who was now sniffing intently around the area where the cap had been found. The dog's behavior suggested there was more to discover, but nothing that indicated immediate danger. "Not yet. Ranger and I are going to secure the scene and continue the investigation. This tunnel system is bigger than we thought, and if Jimmy was down here, we need to figure out why." As Marcus carefully bagged the baseball cap using evidence collection techniques that had become second nature over his years on the force, his mind raced with questions. What had brought Jimmy down here? Was he investigating the same anonymous tips that had led to today's mission? And most importantly, if he had been down here 7 days ago, where was he now? Ranger continued to work the scent trail, moving deeper into the tunnel system with purposeful determination. Marcus followed, knowing that his four-legged partner might be the key to solving a mystery that had been haunting their entire precinct for the past week. The tunnel stretched ahead of them, dark and seemingly endless, holding secrets that were finally beginning to reveal themselves. 20 minutes later, the heavy footsteps of Captain Elena Rodriguez echoed through the tunnel entrance above. Marcus could hear her commanding voice coordinating with Officer Patterson as additional units arrived to secure the perimeter. The routine inspection had officially transformed into a full-scale investigation, and with it came the weight of departmental scrutiny and family emotion that complicated everything. Thompson, status report. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the radio, carrying an undertone of barely controlled anxiety that Marcus had never heard from his usually unflappable superior. We're approximately 300 yards into the left passage. Captain, Ranger's tracking something consistent. The scent trail is leading us deeper into the system, and there are signs that someone has been through here recently. What Marcus didn't mention over the radio was the growing collection of small evidence markers he had been placing as they progressed. A torn piece of fabric caught on a protruding bolt. Scuff marks on the tunnel floor that looked fresh. Most tellingly, footprints in the accumulated dust and debris that matched the size and tread pattern of standard police-issued boots. Ranger had been moving with increasing purpose, his tail held at that specific angle that Marcus knew indicated hot pursuit of a familiar scent. The dog's training had taught him to differentiate between dozens of individual human scent signatures, and right now he was locked onto one particular trail with laser focus. "The thing I don't understand," Marcus muttered to his partner, "is what Jimmy was doing down here in the first place. This area wasn't on any of the patrol routes, and there were no official investigations assigned to this location." The tunnel began to widen as they moved deeper underground. Marcus's flashlight revealed that they were entering what appeared to be a junction chamber where multiple passages converged. This part of the infrastructure looked older, with different construction materials and techniques that suggested it had been built in phases over many decades. Ranger immediately moved to the right side passage, his nose working frantically. Within moments, he disappeared around a corner, leaving Marcus momentarily alone in the junction chamber. The silence was profound and unsettling. "Ranger, heel!" Marcus called, but received no response. This was unusual. The dog's training emphasized staying within sight of his handler unless specifically released for independent search operations. Marcus moved quickly toward the passage where Ranger had vanished, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness ahead. The sound of his own breathing seemed amplified in the enclosed space, and he became acutely aware of every small noise: the drip of water, the settling of old concrete, the distant rumble of traffic on the streets above. "Ranger, where are you, boy?" A sharp bark echoed from somewhere ahead, followed by the sound of claws on concrete. Marcus quickened his pace, rounding the corner to find Ranger sitting perfectly still in front of what appeared to be a solid wall. The dog's posture indicated he had found something significant, but Marcus couldn't immediately see what had captured his partner's attention. The wall looked like standard concrete construction, identical to hundreds of other sections they had passed, but as Marcus approached, running his flashlight beam methodically across the surface, he began to notice subtle differences. The concrete here was slightly different in color and texture, and there were tool marks that suggested more recent construction work. "What did you find, boy?" Ranger remained motionless, his gaze fixed on a specific section of the wall about 3 feet from the ground. Marcus knelt down beside his partner and examined the area more closely. There, barely visible unless you knew what to look for, was a hairline crack that ran vertically for about 18 inches. Marcus pressed against the wall and, to his surprise, felt a slight give in the concrete. This wasn't a solid wall at all. It was some kind of camouflaged entrance designed to look like part of the original tunnel construction, but actually concealing a passage beyond. Good boy, Ranger. Outstanding work. The dog's tail wagged briefly at the praise, but his attention remained focused on the hidden entrance. Marcus reached for his radio to report the discovery, but hesitated. Something about this situation was making his detective instincts fire warning signals. Hidden passages weren't built by accident, and they certainly weren't part of any official city infrastructure project. Instead of radioing immediately, Marcus decided to investigate further. He searched around the edges of the false wall until he found a section that moved when pressed. With careful pressure, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a passage that had been completely invisible moments before. The air that wafted out of the hidden passage carried a different scent than the main tunnel. It smelled of recent human occupation, coffee, and something else that Marcus couldn't quite identify. Ranger's entire body tensed with excitement, and he looked up at Marcus with an expression that clearly communicated his desire to investigate further. "Easy, boy. We need to be smart about this." Marcus clicked on his radio. "Patterson, I need you to relay a message to Captain Rodriguez. Tell her we've discovered a concealed passage off the main tunnel system. Ranger and I are going to investigate, but I want backup units staged and ready. If you don't hear from us in 30 minutes, send in the cavalry." "Copy that, Marcus. Be careful down there." The hidden passage was narrower than the main tunnel, barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side, but it was well maintained, with newer concrete work and even some basic electrical infrastructure that included a string of low-voltage LED lights mounted along the walls. "Someone's been taking very good care of this place," Marcus observed as he and Ranger moved forward. "Turi, this isn't some forgotten city maintenance tunnel. This was built with a specific purpose in mind." The passage curved gently to the left, and after about 50 yards, opened into a larger chamber. Marcus's flashlight revealed what appeared to be an underground workshop of some kind. There were tables, chairs, electrical equipment, and dozens of cardboard boxes stacked along the walls. Everything looked recently used and carefully organized. Ranger immediately began investigating the space, his nose leading him from item to item with systematic thoroughness. Within minutes, he had zeroed in on a workbench near the back wall, where he sat down and looked expectantly at Marcus. On the workbench, partially hidden under a canvas tarp, Marcus found items that made his pulse quicken. A Detroit Police Department radio, a service weapon in its holster, and a notebook filled with handwriting he recognized as Jimmy Rodriguez's distinctive script. "Patterson, I need that backup now," Marcus said into his radio, his voice tight with controlled excitement. "We've found Detective Rodriguez's equipment, and there's evidence of ongoing activity down here. This is no longer a search and rescue operation. This is a full investigation." As Marcus began photographing the scene with his phone, being careful not to disturb anything before the forensics team could process it properly, Ranger continued his methodical search of the chamber. The dog moved with purpose, checking every corner and crevice with the thoroughness that had made him one of the department's most decorated K9 units. Near a stack of boxes in the far corner, Ranger began to show signs of increased agitation. His tail came up, his ears went forward, and he began a low whimpering sound that Marcus had learned to associate with significant discoveries. "What is it now, boy?" Hidden behind the boxes, Marcus discovered something that changed everything. A sleeping bag, recently used, along with empty food containers and a small camp stove. Someone had been living down here, and from the evidence, they might still be close by. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Jimmy hadn't simply disappeared or gotten lost in the tunnel system. He had been staying down here intentionally, maintaining some kind of covert operation that apparently required him to work outside normal departmental protocols. The question was why, and more importantly, where was Jimmy now? Marcus's radio crackled to life with Captain Rodriguez's voice, tension evident in every word. "Thompson, I need you and Ranger to maintain position and wait for backup. We're sending down a full tactical team along with forensics. Do not proceed further into the tunnel system until we have additional units in place." "Understood, Captain. But you should know that Detective Rodriguez was conducting some kind of operation down here. This isn't a simple missing person case anymore." The silence that followed stretched for long seconds before Captain Rodriguez responded, her voice carefully controlled. "We'll discuss what Jimmy might have been doing when I get down there. For now, secure the scene and wait for backup." As Marcus settled in to wait, Ranger continued to patrol the chamber with restless energy. The dog's behavior suggested there was still more to discover, still more secrets hidden in the darkness of Detroit's forgotten underground. Marcus had the distinct feeling that finding Jimmy's equipment was just the beginning of a much larger and more complicated story. Captain Elena Rodriguez descended into the tunnel system 45 minutes later, accompanied by a full forensics team and 2 additional K9 units. Marcus watched her approach through the hidden passage, noting the way her usually perfect composure showed cracks of strain around the edges. The discovery of Jimmy's equipment had clearly shaken her more than she was letting on. "Thompson, report," she said as she entered the concealed chamber, her flashlight beam sweeping across the makeshift living space that had been carefully documented by the forensics team. "Detective Rodriguez has been operating some kind of covert surveillance from this location for at least several days, possibly longer. The equipment is all department issued, but there's no record of any authorized investigation in this area. Ranger tracked his scent trail directly here, and everything suggests Jimmy was working alone." Elena Rodriguez stood silently for several minutes, studying the scene with the practiced eye of a 20-year police veteran. Marcus could see her processing the implications of what they had discovered, and he knew she was grappling with the same questions that had been bothering him. "There's something I need to tell you about Jimmy," she said finally, her voice carrying a weight that suggested family secrets were about to be revealed. Something that might explain why he felt the need to conduct an unauthorized investigation. Marcus waited, knowing from experience that Elena Rodriguez chose her words carefully and rarely revealed personal information without good reason. 3 months ago, Jimmy came to me with concerns about some irregularities he had noticed in departmental evidence processing. Nothing that pointed to corruption or misconduct, but patterns that didn't make sense to him. I told him to document everything and file a formal report through proper channels. She paused, running her hand along the edge of the workbench where Jimmy's notebook lay open to pages of detailed observations written in his careful handwriting. 2 weeks later, he came back to me and said he had been advised by Internal Affairs to drop his inquiry. They told him his concerns were unfounded and that pursuing them further might be detrimental to his career. Marcus felt pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to connect in his mind, but he didn't drop it. Jimmy Rodriguez is one of the most principled officers I've ever worked with, and he's also one of the most stubborn. When someone tells him not to investigate something, it only makes him more determined to find the truth. Elena's voice carried a mixture of pride and frustration that spoke to years of family dynamics. Ranger, who had been quietly exploring the chamber while the humans talked, suddenly became alert near a section of wall that Marcus hadn't yet examined closely. The dog's behavior indicated he had found another scent trail, this one leading away from the chamber through what appeared to be yet another concealed passage. "Captain, I think Rangers found something else." They followed the dog to where he sat patiently beside what looked like a solid concrete wall, But closer inspection revealed another carefully camouflaged entrance, this one even more sophisticated than the first. Someone had spent considerable time and effort creating a network of hidden passages throughout the tunnel system. "How extensive is this underground network?" Eleanor asked, more to herself than to Marcus. "And who built it?" Marcus consulted the city records he had pulled up on his tablet before descending into the tunnels. According to municipal records, this tunnel system was built in 3 phases between 1942 and 1967. But there are gaps in the documentation, particularly during the 1950s, when several classified military contracts were issued for infrastructure improvements in this area. Military contracts? Detroit was a major defense production center during the Cold War. A lot of the work was classified, and many of the records were sealed or destroyed when the contracts ended. Elena Rodriguez studied the hidden entrance with new interest. So we could be looking at forgotten government infrastructure, possibly designed for purposes that were never made public. The implications were staggering. If Jimmy had stumbled across evidence of classified government facilities beneath Detroit, it would explain why Internal Affairs had been so quick to shut down his investigation. It would also explain why he felt the need to continue his research through unofficial channels. "There's more," Marcus said, pulling out Jimmy's notebook and turning to a page filled with detailed sketches and measurements. "Look at these drawings." Jimmy wasn't just randomly exploring down here. He was mapping the entire network, documenting connections between different sections, and trying to understand the overall layout. The notebook revealed the methodical mind of a detective who had stumbled across something significant and was determined to understand its full scope. Page after page showed careful observations about construction techniques, architectural features, and evidence of recent maintenance work in areas that should have been abandoned decades ago. "Someone's been keeping these passages operational," Elena observed, running her finger along Jimmy's notes about electrical systems and ventilation equipment. "This isn't just historical curiosity. Someone is actively using this network." Ranger began moving toward the newly discovered passage, his tail held high with excitement. Marcus and Elena followed, their flashlights revealing a tunnel that was noticeably different from the others they had explored. This one had been recently cleaned, with fresh paint on some sections and modern LED lighting installed along the ceiling. "This is definitely not city infrastructure," Marcus said, as they moved deeper into the passage. "Whoever built this had resources and expertise that go well beyond typical urban planning." The passage led to another chamber, larger than the first, with multiple branching tunnels leading off in different directions. But what caught their attention immediately was the evidence of very recent occupancy: fresh coffee cups, newspapers dated within the past week, and electronic equipment that was still powered on. "Someone was here very recently," Elena said, her hand instinctively moving to her service weapon. "Possibly within the last few hours." Ranger began showing increased agitation, moving between different tunnels and whimpering in a way that suggested he was detecting multiple human scent trails. His training had taught him to track individual people. But what he was finding here was more complex than a simple search and rescue scenario. "Easy, boy," Marcus said, recognizing the signs that his partner was becoming overwhelmed by conflicting sensory input. "Take it slow." But Ranger was insistent, moving to a tunnel entrance on the far side of the chamber and looking back at Marcus with an expression that clearly communicated urgency. Whatever he was detecting in that direction was different from the other scent trails, and his body language suggested it was something that required immediate attention. "He wants us to follow him," Marcus told Elena, "but I think we should call for additional backup before we go any deeper into this network." Elena considered this for a moment, weighing the need for caution against the possibility that Jimmy might be somewhere in the tunnel system needing help. And how confident are you in Ranger's tracking abilities? He's never been wrong, not once in 5 years of partnership. Then we follow his lead, but we proceed with full tactical awareness. If this network is as extensive as Jimmy's notes suggest, we need to understand what we're dealing with. As they prepared to follow Ranger deeper into the underground maze, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover something that would change everything they thought they knew about Detroit's hidden history. The evidence suggested a story that went back decades, involving classified government projects, ongoing covert operations, and now Jimmy Rodriguez's determination to uncover the truth. Whatever secrets were hidden in these tunnels, they were significant enough that someone had gone to great lengths to keep them buried. But with Ranger leading the way and Elena Rodriguez's determination to find her nephew, Marcus knew they were going to see this investigation through to its conclusion, regardless of where it led them. The tunnel stretched ahead into darkness, holding answers to questions they were only beginning to understand how to ask. And somewhere in that maze of concrete and shadow, Jimmy Rodriguez was waiting to be found, along with the truth he had risked everything to uncover. Ranger led them through a maze of interconnected passages that seemed to extend far beyond what any city planning document had ever recorded. As they moved deeper into the network, Marcus began to understand the true scope of what they were dealing with. This wasn't just a forgotten tunnel system. It was a carefully engineered underground facility that had been designed for purposes that went far beyond simple municipal infrastructure. "Marcus, look at this construction," Elena said, running her flashlight along the walls of the passage they were traversing. "This concrete work is much more sophisticated than anything the city would have built in the 1940s. These walls are reinforced, and look at these junction boxes. This electrical infrastructure is definitely military grade." The evidence was becoming undeniable. They were walking through what appeared to be a Cold War-era government facility that had been constructed beneath Detroit without any public knowledge or oversight. The implications were staggering, both for the city's history and for whatever Jimmy Rodriguez had discovered that led him down here. Ranger continued to move with purpose, but Marcus could see that his partner was beginning to show signs of sensory overload. The dog's nose was working constantly, analyzing layer upon layer of scent information that told a complex story about human activity in these tunnels over many decades. "How many different people has he tracked down here?" Elena asked, noticing Ranger's increasingly agitated behavior. "At least 4 or 5 distinct scent trails, but they're overlapping in ways that suggest regular traffic through this area. This isn't an abandoned facility, Captain. Someone has been using it actively, and they know how to move through it efficiently." They emerged into what appeared to be a central hub, with passages branching off in 6 different directions. The chamber was larger than any they had previously encountered, with a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into shadows above their flashlight beams. Along the walls, they could see mounting brackets for equipment that was no longer present, suggesting the space had once housed significant technological infrastructure. "This is like a command center," Elena observed, studying the layout of the chamber. "Look at these cable runs and ventilation systems. Whatever they were doing down here, it required serious computing and communication capabilities." Marcus was examining a series of metal plates mounted on one wall when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Etched into the metal, barely visible unless you were looking for it, was a series of numbers and letters that he recognized as military unit designations from classified operations during the 1960s. "Elena, you need to see this." She joined him at the wall, studying the markings with the trained eye of someone who had spent years analyzing evidence. "These look like operational codes, unit designations, probably." But they're not from any standard military branch. That's because they're not standard military, came a voice from the shadows at the far end of the chamber. Both Marcus and Elena spun toward the sound, their hands moving instinctively toward their service weapons. Ranger immediately positioned himself between his handlers and the source of the voice, his body tense but not showing signs of immediate threat assessment. "Who's there?" "Identify yourself." A figure stepped into the light of their flashlights, hands raised to show he wasn't armed. Marcus felt a surge of relief and confusion as he recognized Detective Jimmy Rodriguez, looking tired and disheveled, but very much alive and apparently unharmed. "Jimmy!" Elena's voice carried a mixture of relief, anger, and sisterly concern. "What the hell are you doing down here?" "The entire department has been looking for you for 7 days. Jimmy Rodriguez looked older than Marcus remembered, as if the past week had aged him years rather than days. His uniform was dirty and wrinkled, but his eyes held the sharp focus of someone who had been working intensively on a complex problem. "I'm sorry, Elena. I know I should have contacted you, but I needed time to understand what I had discovered before involving anyone else. What I found down here is bigger than departmental irregularities. It's bigger than anything we've ever dealt with." Marcus felt Ranger relax beside him, the dog's training having confirmed that Jimmy posed no threat. But questions were multiplying faster than answers. "Jimmy, we found your equipment in that concealed chamber, your radio, your weapon, your notebook. If you're here, why did you abandon your gear?" Jimmy's expression darkened. Because I discovered I wasn't the only one investigating this facility, and I needed to disappear for a while to figure out who else knows about this place and what their intentions are." Eleanor stepped closer to her nephew, the relief of finding him alive beginning to give way to professional curiosity about what he had uncovered. "What exactly have you been doing down here for the past week?" "Documenting everything, mapping the entire network, and trying to understand who has been maintaining these facilities and why." Jimmy pulled a waterproof case from his pocket and extracted a tablet computer. "Elena, this underground complex extends for miles in every direction. It connects to at least 12 different buildings in downtown Detroit, including several that house major corporations and government offices." Marcus felt the implications of this revelation settling over him like a heavy blanket. "Vale, are you saying this is some kind of surveillance network?" "I'm saying this facility was designed during the Cold War as a communications intelligence center, and it never stopped operating. Someone has been using it to monitor electronic communications throughout Detroit for decades, possibly longer." The tablet screen showed detailed maps that Jimmy had been creating, documenting passage layouts, equipment installations, and connection points to the surface. The scope was breathtaking. What they were looking at represented one of the most sophisticated covert intelligence operations ever constructed on American soil. "Who knows about this?" Elena asked, her voice tight with the realization that they were dealing with something far beyond normal police work. "That's the question I've been trying to answer," Jimmy replied. "And it's also why I had to go off the grid. Because some of the people who know about this facility work within our own department." The silence that followed this revelation was profound. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat in his ears as the implications sank in. If Jimmy was right, then his investigation into departmental irregularities had uncovered not just administrative problems, but active cooperation between Detroit police personnel and whatever organization was running this underground intelligence operation. Ranger began showing signs of agitation again, moving toward one of the unexplored passages with renewed interest. His behavior suggested they were not alone in the facility, and that someone else was moving through the tunnel system. "Jimmy, who else knows you're down here?" Marcus asked, his hand moving toward his radio to call for additional backup. "That's just it. I don't know, but someone has been tracking my movements, and they've been staying one step ahead of me for the past 3 days. Whoever they are, They know these tunnels better than I do, and they have resources that go well beyond anything a local operation could support. Elena Rodriguez looked at her nephew with a mixture of pride and concern. So you've been playing cat and mouse with unknown operatives in a classified intelligence facility for 3 days, and you didn't think to call for backup. I was gathering evidence first. I needed to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with before I brought anyone else into this situation. Elena, if I'm right about departmental involvement, we can't trust normal communication channels. Marcus's radio crackled to life with Officer Patterson's voice from the surface. Thompson, I'm showing movement on our perimeter sensors. We may have additional individuals attempting to access the tunnel system from alternate entrances. The four of them looked at each other with growing concern. Whatever Jimmy had discovered, it appeared that their investigation was about to become significantly more complicated. We need to get out of here, Elena said, her command instincts taking over. If there are unknown operatives moving through this system, we're potentially in a tactical disadvantage position. But Ranger was insistent, moving toward the passage where he had been detecting activity, his body language indicating that whatever he was tracking was moving closer to their location. Wait, Jimmy said, studying his tablet display. If someone is coming through the system toward us, this might be our best chance to identify who we're dealing with. I've been trying to make contact for 3 days. Marcus looked at his partner, then at Elena, then at Jimmy. The decision they made in the next few minutes would determine not just the outcome of their investigation, but potentially the safety of everyone involved in uncovering Detroit's most carefully guarded secret. The sound of footsteps echoing through the tunnel system grew steadily louder as Ranger positioned himself protectively in front of his human companions. Marcus could see the dog's training taking over, his body language shifting into alert mode while maintaining the disciplined composure that made him such an effective partner in uncertain situations. They're coming from the Northwest Passage, Jimmy said, consulting his tablet and the detailed maps he had created over the past week. That connects directly to the federal building downtown. If I'm right about who's been operating this facility, we're about to meet some very interesting people. Elena Rodriguez checked her service weapon and radio, her years of command experience evident in the efficient way she prepared for an unknown encounter. Jimmy, I need you to understand that we're going to have to follow proper protocols here, regardless of what you've discovered. If these are federal agents or military personnel, we need to handle this situation by the book. The footsteps were now clearly audible. Multiple individuals moving through the passage with the kind of coordinated precision that suggested professional training. Marcus felt his adrenaline levels spike, but Ranger's behavior remained calm and alert rather than aggressive, which gave him some confidence that they weren't facing an immediate threat. 3 individuals, Marcus said, reading his partner's body language with the expertise that came from years of partnership. Moving in tactical formation, but not approaching with hostile intent. The first figure to emerge from the Northwest Passage was a woman in her 50s, wearing civilian clothes but carrying herself with unmistakable military bearing. She was followed by 2 men, also in civilian attire, both of whom moved with the careful awareness of people who had spent careers in dangerous situations. "Detective Rodriguez," the woman said, addressing Jimmy directly. "I'm Special Agent Sarah Mitchell, Department of Homeland Security. We've been monitoring your investigation, and we need to talk." Elena stepped forward, her captain's authority evident in her posture. "Agent Mitchell, I'm Captain Elena Rodriguez, Detroit Police Department. I'm going to need to see identification. And I need to understand what federal interest there is in our missing person investigation." Agent Mitchell produced credentials that appeared legitimate under Marcus's flashlight examination, though he knew that sophisticated forgeries were always possible in situations involving intelligence operations. Captain Rodriguez, what your nephew discovered is a facility that has been jointly operated by multiple federal agencies since 1962. It was originally designed as a communications intelligence center during the Cold War, but its mission has evolved significantly over the decades. Jimmy looked vindicated, but also concerned as his week-long investigation began to be confirmed by official sources. I documented evidence of ongoing surveillance operations targeting civilian communications throughout Detroit. That goes well beyond any legal authority for domestic intelligence gathering. Detective Rodriguez, you're not wrong about the scope of operations here, Agent Mitchell said, her tone suggesting that she was about to reveal information that was usually classified at the highest levels. But what you discovered wasn't illegal surveillance. This facility has been repurposed as a cybersecurity monitoring center, working with private sector partners to detect and prevent attacks on critical infrastructure. Marcus felt some of the tension in the air beginning to dissipate as the pieces of the mystery started falling into place. So the departmental irregularities Jimmy noticed were related to cooperation with federal cybersecurity operations. Exactly. Several Detroit Police Department personnel have security clearances that allow them to provide liaison support for our operations. The irregularities Detective Rodriguez observed were the result of evidence handling procedures that are different for cases involving national security issues. Elena Rodriguez studied Agent Mitchell with the practiced eye of someone who had spent decades evaluating the credibility of people in stressful situations. Why wasn't Jimmy simply briefed on this when he filed his initial inquiry? Why did Internal Affairs tell him to drop his investigation? Because at that time, we weren't certain that Detective Rodriguez could be trusted with classified information. His investigation methods were aggressive and thorough, which are excellent qualities in a police detective, but potentially problematic when dealing with sensitive national security operations. Jimmy looked frustrated by this explanation. So I spent a week hiding in tunnels because you were running a background check on me? Agent Mitchell's expression softened slightly. Detective Rodriguez, we were impressed by your investigative skills and your determination to uncover the truth. In fact, we've been hoping to recruit you for our liaison program. Your week underground has been something of an extended job interview. The implications of this revelation were staggering. What had appeared to be a mysterious disappearance and a potential conspiracy involving corrupt police officers was actually an elaborate recruitment process for a classified federal program. Ranger, who had been monitoring the conversation with the intense focus that police dogs brought to complex situations, suddenly became alert again. His attention was directed not toward the federal agents, but toward another passage on the opposite side of the chamber. "We're not alone," Marcus said, interpreting his partner's signals. "Rangers detecting additional human activity." Agent Mitchell looked concerned, but not surprised. That would be the technical team. We've been using Detective Rodriguez's investigation as an opportunity to conduct a comprehensive security review of this facility. There are several other personnel working in different sections of the complex. Over the next few minutes, additional individuals began emerging from various passages throughout the chamber. Marcus counted 8 people in total, all wearing civilian clothes but clearly working as part of a coordinated operation. Some carried electronic equipment, others had laptops and communication devices. And all of them moved with the professional efficiency of people who were very familiar with the underground facility. "This is a much larger operation than we realized," Elena observed, watching the organized activity around them. "Captain Rodriguez, this facility processes cybersecurity intelligence for the entire Great Lakes region," Agent Mitchell explained. "We monitor everything from potential attacks on power grids to attempts to compromise financial networks. Detroit's central location and existing infrastructure made it an ideal location for this kind of operation." Jimmy pulled out his tablet again, showing the detailed maps he had created during his week underground. But why all the secrecy? Why not just brief local law enforcement on the existence of this facility? Because effective cybersecurity operations require operational security that can only be maintained through compartmentalized information. The fewer people who know about this facility, the less likely it is to be compromised by hostile intelligence services. Marcus found himself impressed by the scope and sophistication of what they had discovered. So Detroit has been hosting one of the nation's most advanced cybersecurity centers without even knowing it. That's correct. And it's been incredibly effective. We've prevented dozens of major cyber attacks over the past decade, protected millions of people's personal information, and maintained the security of critical infrastructure throughout the region. Elena Rodriguez looked at her nephew with a mixture of pride and exasperation. Jimmy, do you realize that your stubborn determination to investigate departmental irregularities has uncovered one of the most important national security operations in the Midwest? I just wanted to make sure we were following proper procedures, Jimmy said with a slight smile. I had no idea it would lead to anything like this. Agent Mitchell addressed the group as a whole. We have a proposition for all of you. Detective Rodriguez has demonstrated exactly the kind of investigative skills and determination that we need for our liaison program. Captain Rodriguez, your leadership experience would be valuable in helping us coordinate with local law enforcement. And Detective Thompson, your K-9 capabilities would be incredibly useful for our facility security operations. Marcus looked down at Ranger, who was now calmly surveying the activity around them with the satisfied expression of a dog who had successfully completed a complex tracking mission. What exactly are you offering? Specialized training, security clearances, and the opportunity to work on cases that have national significance while remaining members of the Detroit Police Department. You would be protecting your community in ways that most law enforcement officers never have the chance to experience. The offer was intriguing, but Marcus knew that decisions like this required careful consideration. We'd need to discuss this with our families, understand the time commitments, and make sure we could still fulfill our regular departmental responsibilities. Of course, this is a significant opportunity, and we want everyone to make informed decisions. Take all the time you need to consider it. As they prepared to leave the underground facility and return to the surface, Marcus reflected on how dramatically their routine tunnel inspection had evolved. What had started as a simple investigation had revealed not just Detroit's hidden history, but also opportunities for their own professional futures that they never could have imagined. Ranger trotted beside him with the confident gait of a dog who had done his job well, leading his humans through a mystery that had turned out to be far more complex and important than anyone had anticipated. 3 weeks later, Marcus Thompson stood in the same tunnel entrance where their extraordinary journey had begun, but everything felt different now. The morning sunlight streaming through the grating above cast familiar shadows on the concrete walls. Yet he was seeing this place through completely new eyes. Beside him, Ranger waited patiently, his tail wagging with the kind of excited anticipation that meant he knew something important was about to happen. "You sure about this, partner?" Marcus asked, scratching behind his dog's ears in the gesture that had become their ritual before beginning any significant operation. "This is going to be different from anything we've done before." The decision had not been easy. Marcus had spent sleepless nights discussing the federal offer with his wife, Sarah, weighing the opportunities against the unknowns, considering what it would mean for their family and for his partnership with Ranger. In the end, it was Sarah who had provided the perspective that helped him decide. "Marcus, you've spent 15 years protecting Detroit in ways that everyone could see," she had told him over coffee one morning. Maybe it's time to protect it in ways that no one will ever know about. Elena Rodriguez emerged from the tunnel system, now wearing the subtle badge that identified her as a liaison coordinator between the Detroit Police Department and the Department of Homeland Security. The past 3 weeks had transformed her as well, as she had thrown herself into understanding the full scope of the cybersecurity operations and how they could be better integrated with traditional law enforcement activities. "The facility is ready for the final security sweep," she reported to Marcus. "Jimmy's already down there with Agent Mitchell, running through the updated protocols for the K9 detection systems." Over the past weeks, Jimmy Rodriguez had embraced his new role with characteristic enthusiasm, diving deep into cybersecurity intelligence with the same methodical approach he had brought to traditional detective work. His experience investigating the facility had made him invaluable in helping design improved security procedures that balanced operational security with effective law enforcement cooperation. "How's he adjusting to the federal training?" Marcus asked as they prepared to descend into the tunnels one final time as purely Detroit Police Department personnel. "You know, Jimmy, he's treating it like the most important case of his career, which, in many ways, it is." Eleanor's voice carried pride, mixed with the kind of concern that came from watching a family member take on significant new responsibilities. As they made their way through the passages that had once seemed mysterious and threatening, but now felt familiar and purposeful, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his understanding of his own city had changed. Detroit wasn't just a post-industrial metropolis working to reinvent itself. It was also home to one of the nation's most sophisticated cybersecurity operations, protecting millions of people in ways they would never know or appreciate. Ranger moved through the tunnels with confident familiarity, his nose working to catalog all the scents that had become routine over their recent training sessions. The dog had adapted to the underground environment with remarkable ease, and his natural detection abilities had proven invaluable in identifying security vulnerabilities that human observers might miss. They found Jimmy in the main operations center, surrounded by computer equipment that had been installed during the facility's recent upgrade. He was working with 2 federal technicians to test new intrusion detection systems that would use K9 capabilities to supplement electronic security measures. "Marcus!" "Perfect timing," Jimmy called out as they entered the chamber. "We're just about to run the final test of the integrated human K9 security protocol." The transformation of Detective Jimmy Rodriguez was remarkable to witness. 3 weeks ago, he had been a frustrated police officer who felt like his concerns about departmental procedures weren't being taken seriously. Now he was a key player in operations that protected critical infrastructure throughout the Great Lakes region. "How do you feel about the changes, Jimmy?" Marcus asked as they prepared for the security exercise. "Honestly, it's overwhelming sometimes. Learning about cybersecurity threats makes traditional police work seem simple by comparison. But it's also incredibly meaningful to know that we're preventing attacks that could affect millions of people." Agent Mitchell joined them in the operations center, carrying a tablet that displayed real-time security monitoring data from throughout the facility. "Detective Thompson, are you ready for your first official mission as a federal liaison officer?" The transition had been carefully planned to ensure that Marcus and Ranger could maintain their existing responsibilities with the Detroit Police Department while taking on additional duties that would utilize their specialized skills in the federal cybersecurity program. It represented exactly the kind of career development opportunity that Marcus had hoped for but never expected to encounter. "Cool. What's the mission?" Marcus asked, feeling the familiar surge of professional excitement that came with new challenges. "We've identified a potential vulnerability in one of our communication networks. It's not an immediate threat, but it requires investigation by someone with canine detection capabilities and traditional law enforcement experience. Essentially, it's exactly the kind of case that our liaison program was designed to handle. Over the next 2 hours, Marcus and Ranger worked with the federal team to conduct a comprehensive security assessment of the facility's most sensitive areas. The dog's natural abilities, enhanced by specialized training, allowed him to detect electronic devices and human activity patterns that even sophisticated technological systems might miss. Ranger's incredible, one of the federal technicians observed as they watched the dog methodically work through a complex detection exercise. His nose can distinguish between dozens of different electronic signatures, and his behavioral indicators are more reliable than most of our equipment. Marcus felt a surge of pride watching his partner excel in this new environment. Ranger had always been an exceptional police dog, but the federal training had revealed capabilities that went far beyond traditional law enforcement applications. As the exercise concluded, Elena Rodriguez gathered everyone in the main chamber for what she called a transition ceremony. It was an informal recognition of the fact that their professional lives were about to change in fundamental ways, but that the bonds of partnership and family that had brought them together would remain strong. 3 weeks ago, we thought we were dealing with a missing person case, she began, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had spent her career leading people through difficult transitions. What we discovered instead was an opportunity to serve our community in ways we never imagined possible. Jimmy looked around at the facility that had become his new workplace, then at his aunt, who had supported him through the challenging process of career transformation, and finally at Marcus and Ranger, who had been instrumental in uncovering the truth that changed everything for all of them. "I keep thinking about how this all started," Jimmy said. "I was frustrated because I thought the department wasn't taking my concerns seriously, but it turns out that sometimes the system works in ways that aren't immediately visible. The irregularities I noticed weren't signs of problems. They were signs of solutions." Agent Mitchell addressed the group with the kind of formal recognition that marked important transitions in government service. "You've all demonstrated exactly the qualities that we need in the Federal Liaison Program: integrity, determination, adaptability, and a commitment to protecting people even when your efforts might never be publicly recognized." Marcus looked down at Ranger, who was sitting beside him with the alert posture that indicated he was ready for whatever came next. The dog's eyes held the intelligent awareness that had made him such an effective partner for so many years, and Marcus knew that their best work was still ahead of them. "Are you ready for this new chapter, boy?" Marcus asked quietly. Ranger's tail wagged in response, and his expression seemed to say what Marcus was thinking: that they had always been a team, and that working together to protect people was what they did best, regardless of whether those people ever knew about their efforts. As they prepared to leave the facility and begin their new roles as federal liaison officers, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. A routine tunnel inspection had revealed not just hidden infrastructure, but hidden opportunities to serve their community in ways that would have lasting impact on the safety and security of millions of people. The morning sun was brighter when they emerged from the tunnels, and Marcus felt a sense of purposeful optimism that reminded him why he had chosen law enforcement as a career in the first place. Detroit had secrets, but they were secrets worth protecting. And with Ranger by his side and a team of dedicated professionals around them, Marcus knew they were ready to face whatever challenges their new mission would bring. 3 months later, Marcus would receive a commendation for his role in preventing a major cyber attack on the regional power grid. The commendation would be classified, and he would never be able to tell anyone outside his immediate family about the work that earned it. But he would know, and Ranger would know, and that would be enough. Because sometimes the most important work happens in the shadows, protected by the darkness that allows it to keep the light on for everyone else. Dear listeners, we hope that Marcus and Ranger's incredible journey through Detroit's hidden tunnels has captivated your imagination and touched your hearts. This story of partnership, family bonds, and the discovery that our communities are protected in ways we never see represents the kind of dramatic storytelling that we're passionate about bringing to you every day. If you found yourself holding your breath during Marcus and Ranger's underground investigation, wondering whether Jimmy Rodriguez was safe, and feeling moved by the dedication of these professionals who chose to serve their community in extraordinary ways, then you understand why we love sharing these emotionally powerful narratives with you. To continue this journey with us and discover more stories that explore the hidden dramas and unexpected heroism that surround us every day, we've prepared a special playlist that you can find by clicking to your left. These carefully selected stories will take you on emotional adventures that reveal the complexity and beauty of human relationships in ways that will stay with you long after the final words. If Marcus, Ranger, Eleanor, and Jimmy's story resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Your support allows us to continue creating these immersive, dramatic experiences that celebrate the courage, determination, and love that drive ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Every day, we bring you unique stories that dive deep into the moments that define us, the choices that change everything, and the bonds that sustain us through life's most challenging adventures. Don't miss our upcoming content, and please share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing how these stories connect with your own experiences and what they mean to you. Join us again soon for another unforgettable journey into the drama that surrounds us all.